Welcome to the Agility in Real Life podcast, Take 5 in Real Life. Now your hosts, Mike Studeman and Jeff Lee.
Hi, and welcome back to the Take 5 IRL in Real Life podcast. I'm Jeff Lee with Agility IRL.
And I'm Mike Studeman, also with Agility IRL. Hope you're having a good week, everyone. Jeff, how's your week been?
My week has been very good. We always get some questions that come in around user stories, and this week was no exception for me. Getting people to how do we do better user stories? What does Scrum require about user stories? And a lot of different related things. So, Mike, what are you teach a lot of classes. What are some of the questions you get around user stories?
Well, the first thing is I think that there's a big conundrum around, do I have to use user stories in order to do Scrum well? How do you answer that one, Jeff?
Very simply, no. User stories are one way of framing up your product backlog items, right? Scrum has product backlog items. It doesn't have user stories. User stories actually come from extreme programming, different world. They're very useful in Scrum, but that's not their origin. Again, Scrum being an incomplete framework, you can bring things in. User stories are great.
Yeah, I provide similar advice to the people that I have in the classes that I teach. I think a lot of people, and user stories are valuable. I want to plus one that point as well. I think a lot of people try to make everything a user story and they end up in some trouble. User stories are not a format for trying to document technical tasks, your database upgrades, your API configurations, those types of things. They're valuable tools, but like any tool, they can be overused and misused, really. I don't know. Do you see any of that in your work with either teaching or coaching?
Yeah, and I think where people sometimes go astray is trying to make user stories be everything, right? Foundationally, they're meant to be a story. They're not meant to have all the details. And so most of the time when people come to me saying, we need help with writing user stories, we're getting into our sprints and people still have questions. That I tell them that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I always joke, we have a powerful tool available to us under Scrum that we have available to us under Waterfall. We just choose not to use it. That tool is called talking to each other. We can always talk to each other about the content of a user story. The other tip that I always like to provide is don't start your user stories with as a user. It might be just a personal pet peeve of mine, but I want you to get a little bit beyond just a user. Tell me exactly who you're building this functionality for, because the more that you know who that user is, I think the better off you're going to be, all else equal, in pursuit of value. So start your user stories with has a warehouse manager, has a physician who implants more than 10 devices a month, has a stay-at-home parent, those types of things. Once again, the better you can understand who you're building for, I think the better off you're going to be. Plus, if you can't articulate who you're building for, on behalf of all that is good and holy, do not build it. Best product, the easiest product to support is the product that you never build.
Yes, if you don't know who's going to use it, it's probably not really valuable. Definitely agree there.
So any other user story tips here, Jeff, as long as we're talking about the story on user stories?
Yeah, I think build them collaboratively. See people get into discussions and honestly holy wars about who writes the user stories. Doesn't matter. It should be a discussion. That's the whole point. So if it's your product owner or your developers, or if you have a business analyst on the team, sometimes that people like to carve out their territory, and this is how I add value to the team. Again, we want to be collaborative. We want everybody to be working together. And so it doesn't matter who documents it. It should be people working together to get the right things.
Absolutely. I mean, Ron Jeffries, one of the members of the first extreme programming team ever, talks about the importance of the conversation in user stories. It's meant to be the result of a conversation had, or a reminder to have a conversation, not a substitute for conversation. And unfortunately, I think A lot of individuals, a lot of teams have kind of gotten away from that and looked at user stories as just another way to write requirements. It's meant to be that conversation.
Absolutely agree. Any parting thoughts on user stories, Mike?
No, I think we can, no pun intended, say that this is the end of this story.
I think the pun was intended. Thanks everyone for joining us. Hopefully that last comment doesn't dissuade you from joining us for future episodes as well.
Yes, please join us for future episodes. Thanks, Jeff.
The product vision for take5IRL is to provide members of the Agile community with an idea that they can incorporate into their daily lives to make them more effective. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.